Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of JetroCast. I have an excellent guest today. It's a good friend of mine, local Las Vegas attorney, Dan Lippmann. Welcome to the show, Mr. Lippmann.
Howdy.
Can we hear you? You're looking good as usual.
Trying.
So Dan is, I've known him for many years. He's a very good attorney. Primarily focuses on criminal defense and immigration. Was that fair to say? Those are your two main practice areas?
Fair to say.
So I know I feel like I'm deposing people sometimes when I say stuff like that.
Agreed,
so let's, I know I'm going to try and be more interactive. But let's talk about, like, I'll preface this by saying, when I was in law school, I loved my favorite two classes. I think I've told you this: criminal defense and criminal procedure. Loved it. And I think that if I hadn't gotten a job during doing what I was doing, like fairly easily, I probably would have ended up in criminal defense. I still have a very strong passion for it. And I respect people like you who actually fight for the rights of the accused, even though they may be guilty. So you tell me, why did you get into criminal defense?
I took a clinic, juvenile justice clinic, which is essentially you get a real client at the law school. And so I was in my second year, and that was the clinic that I did at UNLV. And the whole class, there was like 12 of us, I think. We all went down to juvenile hall and talked to the public defenders down there. And they essentially had cases to give us, and we got to choose. And, some people wanted like bigger charges. And my one requirement was, I want a case where the guy says he didn't do it. And they're like, okay, well, this is the only one. So it was it was a nothing case. It was a graffiti case. Okay. And so I got the case. I was excited, met with my client. He was out of custody. Let's see, it was early on in the semester, did all the prep. I think I even filed motions to suppress something. I mean, I did like 250 hours of work on a case that now I'd take maybe 20 minutes or far less on. And eventually got to the date of what's called contested hearing, which is like their trial. That's what they call in juvie court. And I got there, and the prosecutor was Michael Callahan, okay, which is the ex-governor of Nevada's son, okay, Michael Callahan Jr. And so, but long time DA vet, like 25 years, big hulking man, maybe 6'4", 250, 300 pounds, just big guy. And he does this thing. He's like, I gotta do a bustos motion. I'm like, what the is a bustos? And so my professor, who had to be there because she was the practicing attorney that was supervising us, she's like, it means they're going to continue it. And I'm like, well, but this is the end of the semester. Like, how are you going to do this? And she's like, well, you get a choice if you want to do it or not. And I was like, absolutely. So we set it in the summer. So I was actually out of school when we did it again. We did the actual trial. And again, I prepped more. I've maybe filed another thing, tried to convince the DA to give him something to dismiss it. And he gave me some speech about how the gangs of the days of yore, when he was doing the murder cases in Clark County, were just a menace to society. And I'm like, well, this kid, he said he wasn't there. He was there, but he didn't participate. And we got some good defenses. Yeah, we're just going to have to do it. So we did it. And I did the whole trial, and I won. So my very first criminal defense case, I won. And there's a feeling that's you just can't repeat. It's that feeling of hearing the judge say either not guilty or petition dismissed or denied, I think is what the terminology in this case. And awesome, this is amazing. I have to do this forever. And so I just continued on that route. The next year, I externed at the public defender's office. I made sure I got jobs lined up with other defense attorneys. And so I just made my resume look like I was going to be the most awesome criminal defense public defender of all time. And that's where I started. I got my first job at public defender's office.
Now, most people's interactions with law enforcement and the criminal defense system, most people, 99% of people, is going to be through meeting a cop at a traffic stop, right? And one of the most frequent questions or sets of questions I get from people is, what am I supposed to do at a traffic stop? Am I supposed to talk to the cop?
Yeah.
Not talk to the cop? What's going to happen?
It helps to be white. It helps to be in a reasonable time of day, and pulled over without any issues. Okay, those are when you have those things going for you, you're already well ahead of the game. Okay.
Well, break that out.
If
I
you're
mean,
living
like,
in
why
a
is that?
bad
Why do you
neighborhood
say
and
that? Why do you say that, Dan? Like, why does that make a difference?
Because my experience is that police will have protectual reasons to get you out of that car. Protectual reasons to make it more than just a traffic stop. Because you're out past 1:00 in the morning and it's a bad neighborhood.
And you think, and you notice that you think
obviously.
race makes a difference? No question.
Yeah, 100%. Best you can is to try to remain calm, right? Hands at 10 and 2, and wait to be instructed, right? I would roll down the window before they approach, okay? But have hands. Don't be searching for stuff. Don't be looking for registration and insurance before they come up. Wait till they tell you to go and get it, okay? Oftentimes, I guess you're instructed when you have a gun, even if you're registered to do a carrying concealed, you're told to tell them there's a gun in the car. Well, they get you out of the car immediately. I've seen lots of cases out of that. I mean, if you got a gun in the car and you got other stuff, I mean, how are they going to know? Huh?
When you say other stuff, do you mean like illegal stuff?
Other contraband.
Okay.
Drugs, a backpack full of credit cards. Right. You got to understand that they do not have permission to search your car until you give them permission. Or there's probable cause for them to not have your permission. They can just exercise it, right? They're right. Plain view. If there's like something in plain view, something in the console, like a pipe, foil, syringe, anything with drug related, and they can just see it, back seat, side seat, console, dashboard, they're going to get you out of the car. That gives them probable cause. They're going to be able to search the car. But if they don't see any of that, the only way they have permission to get in your car is with your permission or warrant. They're not going to have a warrant.
Yeah, I've always told people, if a cop is asking you for permission to search your car, that means they don't have a basis to search your car, and you should say no. Do you agree with that? Okay.
100%.
Dan, let's watch this.
100%.
Let's watch this guy I've been following on TikTok. He puts out this video. He has a script that he wants people to follow. You've probably seen him, but I want to play the video and I want to get your reaction if you agree. Here we go.
Only 25 words we believe you should use when you engage with law enforcement. They are, starting with, why did you pull me over? Then no matter what the cop says, I'm not discussing my day. Then further, no matter what the cop says, asks, they try to intimidate and scare you. Am I being detained or am I free to go? If detained, you must say, I invoke the fifth. And then you simply shut the fuck up when cops ask further questions and try to scare you into talking. Now you comply with their requests to get out of the car, put your hands behind your back, license, insurance, and registration. Remember, don't be fooled. When a cop says, why aren't you cooperating with me? And just, where are you going? Where are you coming from? What's that smell? How many drinks have you had? Why are your eyes red? Why are you sweating? Any number of those questions, they're going to try to say you're not cooperating. But you remember this. Cooperation does not mean talking. When you saw the lights and pulled over,
When you saw the lights and pulled over, you cooperated. So what's your reaction to that? Anything you disagree with?
100%. No, that's exactly right. Right? So cops ask you questions and they want you to answer because oftentimes you're going to self-incriminate. Miranda doesn't apply until you're in custodial interrogation, meaning you're detained. Okay. So Miranda rights don't apply, until they have you in cuffs or detained and then ask you questions. If they're asking you questions before you're detained, they can use those answers. 100%.
So Miranda, it means is they have to warn you that you have the right to remain silent, but they're not going to tell you that unless you're in custody. Before that, they're going to let you mess up, right? Is my understanding correct?
100%. Right. And I can't tell you how many of my clients say, well, I wasn't read my rights. I'm like, okay, well, first, you've watched a lot of TV. So cool. Second, that only applies to your confessions after they've asked you questions, after you've been detained. That's it. Were you detained? No. Were they asking you questions afterwards? No. So then Miranda doesn't apply.
So what happens if you get pulled over and you have had something to drink or some intoxicant, and they say to you, hey, how you doing tonight? Have you had anything to drink? Is it the same advice of the video we just saw, the things we just discussed?
Yeah, I mean, you could do one of the two things. You could deny, which serves the same purpose, I feel, as exercising your fifth, right to remain silent. I feel it serves the same purpose. One can be conceived combative and the other one's not, I guess, but or a blatant lie. But both for evidentiary value on a case works for me.
People want to talk cops out of tickets all the time. My dad was infamous for this. I honestly would rather piss the cop off by not responding. I'll take the ticket. I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of kissing his ring. The only thing I'm primarily concerned about when I get stopped, and I've only ever had one speeding ticket in my life, I've been pulled over a bunch of times, is I'm always respectful but firm. And you're right, I will not move my hands from the steering wheel unless, and I would say, officer, I'm concerned. I want you to be, comfortable with your safety. So I'm not going to move my hands till you tell me to, and I'm going to move them where you want me to. I don't want them to feel unsafe, because you've seen the videos of officers being shot, and it is awful. And I can understand why even the safest stops may escalate into something, and why they're on edge already. I understand that. So although I may be annoyed, I'm going to respect their safety, in addition to the fact my safety, because they have a gun and I don't.
Yeah. Well, and I've also seen the same video where an officer will draw down and shoot an individual who's unarmed because they think that they're reaching for something. I've seen those videos too. No reason to be on either end of that. If your hands are here, they're not going to have any concerns.
So let's go to worst case scenario. Let's say you're completely innocent, done nothing wrong, whatever. Let's just say you get arrested. What happens if for justified or not, you end up in cuffs, you end up in custody in the back of a police officer's car? Let's put it in the context of a DUI. You get pulled over for a DUI, because that's probably the most common way people end up in the back of a cop car. What's going to happen? And how long are you going to be in jail? When do you get out? What's going to happen?
So I'll just talk to like Vegas, right? So if you're here, what's going to happen is they'll probably get you out of the car. They'll probably want you to do field sobriety tests. You do not need to do the field sobriety tests, okay? The HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus, the walk and turn, the one-legged stand, you can refuse, and that's okay. You don't have adverse effects from refusing those. You don't have to give a reason either. Truly, for those to be used against you have to fail those, right? And oftentimes I have clients say, "Oh, I passed them all. I'll get the video, I'll get the receipts, I'll show them," and it's very apparent that they didn't. It's hard to acknowledge or understand or even recognize in the moment that you're failing the field sobriety test, because you don't know the clues that they're looking for. With the follow the finger, you can't see your own eyes and how they look, right? So the smooth pursuit of your pupil to their finger, you can't tell. There's no way you'd be able to tell unless you got a mirror and you're able to look at it at the same time. Not possible. But I would say don't do the field sobriety test, or only do like one and try 1.5 and then just say, I just don't feel comfortable doing the rest, right? They will have you do a preliminary breath test, PBT, and it's just like a blow test, I would recommend you do that. Because refusing to do an evidentiary test can result and does result in your license being revoked for a year. Okay. And a DUI conviction is only up to 6 months. So you don't want to refuse to do the test.
You cannot refuse to do the breath test. You can refuse the field sobriety test.
Field sobriety test you can refuse, and it's yeah.
Okay.
You can refuse to do the field sobriety test without adverse effects.
Okay.
But you
So
want
then
to
what?
agree to the evidentiary tests of either blowing or blood. I would select blood. Why? They have to get your results within 2 hours of you being in actual physical control of your car or driving. Sometimes you just pulled over to the side of the road and you got a car idling, and you're like sleeping it off or something like that. That's still APC because you're immediately able to become able to drive. That's what APC is. So I would select blood because it takes a little bit longer. They do have these labs in a van that like roll around town and test a bunch of people, so they're coming to you instead of you having to go to the jail. So that's speeding up the process a lot. But any chance that you can kind of increase the amount of time between stop and testing, there's a chance that it becomes over 2 hours. And then if they don't have your admission of drinking and they don't have you doing, 3 failed field sobriety tests, they can't use the evidence of the blood or alcohol in your blood. Well, what do they got at that point? Nothing. So I would do those things.
But let's continue on. You blow or you do blood, and they say you're over the limit. We're going in. What's going to happen after that?
They'll take you to whatever jail is taking it, right? Now, if you don't have a record, do not worry. You're going to get out, okay? They're going to administratively release you, and they'll do it within 12 hours. If you do have a record, you might have to post bail, and it probably won't be excessive. It probably, like out of the city, I've seen it like $2,000. I've seen it up to $10,000. You pay 15% of that. You use a bonds person. When you're at the jail, there's just a list of bonds people that you can call. I don't know how they get their numbers in there, but they do. And then you just call them and tell them to call so-and-so. They got money, or you got money on a credit card on your property. You can do that too. But for just a regular DUI, you're probably just going to get out. It's just going to take some time.
So you don't have to wait for a judge. If it's on the weekends, even normally within 12 hours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do not have to wait for a judge.
Interesting. All right. So another topic that I often get people ask me questions about is what happens, what are not Nevada's, but just generally speaking, self-defense laws. And those are kind of state determined. So what we'll talk about today will be Nevada, but I think it applies to a lot of states, especially if they're stand your ground states. So the first thing, and I'll lead out and then you can comment, is in Nevada, you can use force to defend yourself, but there's a condition under which you can use that force. You have to reasonably believe that your use of force is necessary to protect yourself from a threat that's immediate threat of death or injury to yourself or somebody else. That's when you're allowed to engage in some sort of physical altercation. Do you agree with what I'm saying, or did I get something wrong?
No, that's right. That's the right law.
Okay. So now that's the general rule, and there's been some specific doctrines that have come from that. One in Nevada is called the Stand Your Ground law, and I think other states have it. We know Florida has it because there was that famous case in Florida about it. And then there's something called the Castle Doctrine. So let's talk about the Stand Your Ground law in Nevada, and you can tell me your understanding of it. I've got a heading here on the bottom. You can read through it. Tell me if you feel like that's a fair summary of what it is, and then just tell me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair summary of Nevada law. But it still doesn't like supersede self-defense law in general, right? So, for instance, I got a case currently where the guy was pushed. He was pushed to the ground. Okay, he was not the aggressor. Like they're jabbing at each other, jawing. Sorry, and younger man pushes my client, older man, over, pushes him to the ground. Irrefutable. Where it gets mixed up, and there's he said, she said, whatever said, is that this person who is original aggressor starts leaving, and as he was leaving, he gets shot in the back by client. Okay? That's not self-defense. Okay? Because it's not, well, first, it's not proportional, and plus, the imminency of future harm, imminent harm, it's dissipated. There's time. There's a gap. He's removed himself. Okay? Had it stopped right there before gunshot, well, the other guy gets charged with a battery and maybe even a felony because it's on an older person. Okay? But because his actions were then trumped by a bigger action, that it's proportionality, really. This guy didn't have a gun. He's going to be charged with the crime because it's not self-defense. He may have in his mind, it's not what the guy's thinking entirely, right? Because it has to be a reasonable person standard, right? Reasonable person being pushed to the ground, guy walking away without a gun, is it reasonable to shoot him in the back in self-defense? No, right? So he did not have a duty to retreat, but he had a duty to not proportionally counteract the bad act against him.
And under that fact pattern, I'm presuming your client was carrying the sidearm or the weapon lawfully. Yeah. Is that correct?
Legally.
That's important because the third factor here is you cannot be engaged in criminal conduct, and Correct. It would be potentially criminal conduct to use an unlicensed weapon. Although I don't know, maybe what if you think you're going to die and there's a gun there and you use it even though it may not be yours or you may not be licensed?
It's a reasonable
probably get away with
standard,
it.
right? So if you see a gun and he has access to it, well, is it reasonable to think that he's going to run and go get it and shoot at you? I suppose.
Let's so we'll talk also about the castle doctrine, which refers to your home or someone's personal residence. Yeah. And under that doctrine, people are allowed to you can shoot an intruder even if you don't think that in that moment you are an imminent threat of bodily harm if they are in your premises. Is that just inside the house, or is that also anywhere on the property?
The only cases I've seen have been inside the house. I imagine. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know about the backyard. Legal distinction between within the walls of your house and within the walls of a backyard that's open aired. I think those are legally different. Because I will say this, entering into somebody's backyard without permission, it's a trespass. It's not burglary because you're not entering a structure. Outdoors in the backyard, it's not a structure. So I think probably the castle applies to the castle itself and not the walls.
Yeah. And the key thing here is you don't have to be even convinced that they have violent intent if they're not supposed to be in the house. But the problem arises, and I've seen these videos, it's when people break into someone's home, guy runs downstairs with a gun, they see the gun, they run outside the house, and they get shot in the driveway.
Right.
And then you get into... Then
where's the imminent harm? Where did the castle doctrine end? Yeah, exactly.
So those are some things for the people to keep in mind when you're dealing with your home, defense of your home, or when you're dealing with, you get in altercations. Look, the reality is just try and avoid any physical altercation if you can. I don't care what they say to you.
To shoot people. That seems like a
There's
good,
that
reasonable
way. There's that. But I always tell people, when you fight somebody, once you hit somebody, you never know if you're going to hit them just right and you kill them, and then you got to deal with that. I mean, there's the famous case in Nevada probably 10 years ago. Woman's fighting with man at car wash. Woman calls husband. Husband comes. and punches the other guy in the face, knocks him out. He hits his head on the curb, kills the guy. Husband goes to jail.
Yep.
In that moment, they're just arguing about a car wash. So it's like, there's moments when it's not worth it. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is, because the people want like current events, right? There's two kind of ongoing cases. There's a lot of ones. The Idaho one's fascinating. We're not going to talk about that one. There's one in Nevada, which is, I'll play a little TikTok on it to introduce it, but it's basically a Nevada attorney gets investigated by a local reporter, and the local reporter ends up getting killed, and the attorney gets arrested for the murder. And the other one is the Gilgo beach killer in Long Island, not Long Beach, Long Island, where all these escorts had been being killed for many, many years. And they find a local architect who apparently had been the serial killer, and they arrest him. He's a real creepy looking dude. But let's talk for a minute about the Tellez case. I'm going to play the video and then we'll talk about it. Here we go. Actually, I guess we'll talk about the Gilgo beach killers since I loaded that video first. Here we go.
Also known as the Long Island serial killer, we followed his story for years because between 1996 and 2011, this guy has between 10 to 18 victims, all of whom are young women, and they've been found dumped on the beaches and bushes on the south shore of Long Island. 59-year-old Rex Heuermann, who lives in Massapequa, New York, has just been arrested for the crimes. And Rex is a successful Manhattan architect, so friends and families were shocked at the news. Authorities have had their eyes on him. Recently, he's been looking up on his computer sadistic materials, as well as images of the victims and their relatives. Neighbors say his house was sketchy and unkempt.
Okay, so you see the video. You're sitting in your office one day. You get off of doing the podcast with JetroCast. You get a phone call. Hey, Dan Lippmann, it's Rex, whatever creeper, dude. I need you to defend me. I'm gonna give you $500,000 retainer. How are you defending this guy?
Well, first we figure I get on the next flight.
You're taking the case.
Yeah, heck yeah. Heck yeah. It doesn't matter. That sounds awesome. Unkempt. It looked like he hadn't blown the leaves out of his front yard. All right. Well, you're talking to the guy. Okay. Now, I don't ask and I don't want to know necessarily if he did or not. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. Because at the end of the day, it matters not for the court. So it matters what they can prove. So I want to know what they can prove. What are they alleging? And I don't need a story created out of whole cloth, because I'm going to ask questions based off of what they have. Okay. Let me ask the questions. Let me develop a defense theory. I mean, if you have an alibi and it's verifiable, great, easy. Let's build it up. Let's make it lock airtight. But if you don't have that, then it's about knowing what they got, knowing how we're going to defend against it. Why is it that you're searching these people before or after they're murdered? Okay, that's a bad fact. You would agree with me on that, right? You get an investigator right away. You figure out who are the other perps in the neighborhood that look like this creepy guy in a whatever, okay? So it's about building up the case, but yeah, no, you take all the cases if they can pay and you want to. I've had cases where I'm just like, no, that's a lot of money, but no thanks. I'm not interested. And for a variety of reasons, sometimes it could be all consuming. Other times it's not worth the money. Other times the guy has unreasonable expectations about what is going to happen. But money talks. I mean, money buys ability to hire help, to hire great investigators, to really build up a case. So yeah, you take the retainer and then you build up the case.
Now, is it fair to say that, again, using my lawyer thing, I got to fix that. Do you agree that the purpose of all that defense work and getting the investigator and all that is not necessarily to win the trial? It's to maybe get a better offer at minimum?
No, I start every case with my goal is to win it all. And then you back off of it once you get in the case and you figure out if that's obtainable. Okay. But the primary goal of all the cases is, yes, to get it dismissed, to get the not guilty, to get them so they don't press charges, whatever. You want the absolute best at the beginning. Whether it's obtainable is completely separate.
All right, well, let's talk about Robert Tellis now.
A well-known print journalist in Las Vegas was murdered at his own house, stabbed. After an investigation, police showed up at the house of Robert Tellis, an elected official in Clark County, the public administrator. The public administrator administers the estates of, well, dead people. The reporter, Jeff German, had done some investigative reporting on the office and the bad working conditions there, including a possibly inappropriate relationship and bullying. That came out before the primary elections. Tellis was running for re-election and came in third in the Democratic primary after that reporting. Police got a search warrant and showed up at Tellis's house. Tellis showed up later in a hazmat suit and then was arrested and taken out on a stretcher by medics around 6:30 last night. His car was on a tow truck matching the description of a car that was at German's house around the time of the murder. Tellis will be charged with the murder, and it sounds like the police have their man.
Well, this guy, police have their man. Stop, just jump to conclusions, being a true believer in police. But it's probably not advisable to clients to be wearing hazmat suits walking around when you're a murder suspect.
That's a general good rule.
So what are you doing with this guy? I mean, and by the way, since that time, he has already fired his counsel.
Yeah.
He's fired his public defender. I think he's trying to defend himself.
Yes.
The judge is.
Yeah, I've known every single person that's represented him.
Okay. So do you know him? Did you ever know him?
No. He went to law school after me, I think.
Okay. So what are you doing with this guy?
You still do it, but here's his thing. Okay. His thing is absolutely that third prong of he has unreasonable expectations for how this is going to go. There is so much evidence on this case. Okay. That wasn't talked about in this TikTok. There's the blood from the guy on his sneakers. Okay.
Oh.
There's the sombrero that he was wearing cut up in his house. It's the same vehicle that was at the scene. That he does the murder and then gets in his car, gets out of his car. It's all on camera. Okay. Then he goes back into the backyard again because I think he dropped something. I think his phone. Okay.
Well, it's a good idea to go get it back.
Well, yes. Okay. The guy had so much motive against this guy because the investigation journalist guy had done a big old report on him, and that in large probably made it so that he didn't win his election for whatever position he had. And by all accounts, he was a tyrant at work, and everybody hated him. So he probably held a ton of rancor and animosity towards this guy who he thought was the cause of him ruining his life or whatever, but really it's his own making. But no, there's so much evidence on this guy. The reason why nobody can represent him, and he's represented himself, because he has these unreasonable expectations. And then he comes into court and he acts a fool. I mean, it's going to go bad for him.
Well, apparently he was mean to everybody at the office except for one person, whoever he was having sex with in the car of the parking garage with. So he's got a little bit of game there. Hey, he's going to be in jail for a while. He better have a lot of game.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like it does become about filing what you can. Okay, I mean, you get murder cases that are dead to right. I've handled it. Okay, my last murder case, there was no question he did it. Okay, but it's about filing the appropriate motions. It's about really exercising all of the avenues that are available to you in the law, because the result is life, right? The alternative, the punishment is life in prison. Okay. So anything short of that is a victory oftentimes. So it's about building the record. It doesn't matter. I mean, I can't tell you how many cases I've handled where it's obvious they did it. Okay. But it's not about that. It's about what they can prove and then what can you do to make it better.
That's great.
He might be a lost cause.
Yeah, probably. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll talk about your immigration practice in another episode since we've run a little long. How can people find you? I mean, if I get in trouble, I'm calling you first. How can they find you? And what's your, just let them locate you.
Lip law, lips on your face, law. I get called Mr. Lip occasionally because I think it's the firm. Somebody always in my life has misspelled my last name, missing a letter or two. So it's just for marketing, it's Lip Law. You go to liplaw.vegas, you'll find me.
Okay.
Or you just like criminal defense attorney, Las Vegas, immigration attorney, Las Vegas, you'll find me.
Or reach out to me. I'll help you find them. I won't give you a cell number though.
That guy.
And my last question, have you ever had a judge look at you and say, stop giving me lip? No?
Not
Don't
yet.
give him any lip.
That's a goal of mine.
Don't give him any lip, anybody. All right, Dan, thank you so much for your time. And we'll be in touch for the next episode.